All right, welcome everyone to this month's IGRI research seminar. My name is Devor Mondam. I'm the coordinator for the IGRI. Before I introduce and hand things over to this month's presenter, I just want to draw attention to folks. If you follow the IGRI on social media or you're subscribed to our listserv, you will have no doubt noticed that registration/applications for our annual training and doctoral student workshops are now open. They are happening a little bit earlier next year than usual. We've got the training happening in January, and the PhD student workshop will be happening in February. But check those out if you're interested. You can find those on the IGRI website. If you go right to the homepage, they'll be right there. And feel free to share with anyone who you think might be interested. So now, to the main event, introducing our presenter for this month. It is Gaia Taffoni. Gaia Taffoni is a researcher and teaching associate at the School of Transnational Governance at the European University Institute. Her research focuses on regulatory governance and comparative public policy with an interest in the theories and approaches of the policy process. And her presentation today is titled Between Rules and Narratives, Understanding Collective Action and Innovation Policy Processes. Gaia, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Trevor. And I'm starting by sharing the screen to see if everything works fine. All right. Okay, so today I'm presenting a work in progress, so we still haven't finished our analysis, so that's why we value a lot also your feedback and comments. A work that I'm carrying out with my colleagues from ULB, Università di Studi di Firenze, and the Smart City Institute, so Giovanni Esposito, Andrea Terlizzi, and Natalie Crutzen. So the title, the working title of our project is Between Rules and Narratives, Understanding Collective Action in Innovation Policy Processes. So we started from this conundrum, this issue. So when reasoning, when thinking about what drives collective action, on the one hand, one can, there are at least two separate but somehow interrelated analytical frameworks that can be used. On the one hand, looking at the rules and the norms and the strategies that can be understood as the forces of human behavior, as Ostrom put it. And on the other hand, there is also another way to make sense of the strategy of policy actors, that is to account for the stories that are narrated by them. So in this way, it is discourses rather than rules that are conceived to shape the policies. So the discourses take narrative forms, and for accounting for the different articulation of languages is also a way to understand the strategic management that actors actually do of complex system. So what we looked at is what happens when this combined approach is used to study a complex policy process, such as the one of implementing and developing a smart city. So let's start from this, from the fact that we draw a lot from a previous study, Dunlop et al. 2021, that tried already to put in conversation institutional grammar tool and narrative policy framework. So these two analytical frames. But then we ask ourselves that when approaching a complex innovation policy, such as the creation of a smart city, we had to advance somehow this analytical approach. So the characteristic of developing a smart city it has some kind of variables. First of all, it requires a deep social and technological changes that are put in place. And then it is also characterized by a dynamic assemblage of strategy that are not necessarily unfolding one after each other, and they also spread across a multi-dimensional space of networks among actors. So the narrative categories and the institutional rules, they provide rather a static representation of the actor strategy. So we tried to put this combined analytical framework in a dynamic way, so to put it really into motion. So we start this from an elaboration of the conceptual framing of policy assemblage that really brings the focus on how multiple and also heterogeneous components are arranged to create some kind of more governmental forms. So we started from these working research questions, that is, how do policymakers use narratives and institutional rules in a processual perspective to establish relational connections with business and civil society groups in order to create a smart city. So our explanatory approach draws on the phases that are recognized by the actor network theory AND. So the base and central to AND is the translation process, meaning that any innovation is intended as a translational effort that actors make in order to put together something that is meaningful for them. So these are the phases that are recognized by actor network theory. So briefly, we have the problematization first phase. The problematization is linked to the nature, to identification of the nature of the problem that is to be solved through the innovation that requires the collective action. So during this phase, the principal actor works to establish some kind of community of interest between the set of actors group. Then we move on to the recognition of an interessement phase. So this phase corresponds to the actions where the principal actor really locks the other actors in some common action program and also cutting them off from alternative programs. Then the enrollment phase, these steps corresponds to the allocation and coordination of roles within the action program. And finally, the mobilization phase. So this phase enables the network expansion through the socialization of new actors whose support is also important for the successful accomplishment of the innovation policy per se. So where we applied this complex analytical framework, well, we studied the development of a smart city that we call Alphaville, which is clearly a fictional name of a city. This is just to maintain the anonymity of the people that we interviewed. We conducted 24 semi-structured interviews, and then these interviews were coded using NVivo. So we interviewed actors from the government administration. So we had, of course, the mayor of the city, council members, 4 project managers, the director general, and also policy coordinators. And then from the business dimension, we had 3 entrepreneurs and 2 managers. And then also from the university and research dimension, so we had the vice rector of the university of the city and the managers of the university. And then, of course, some voices from the civil society with members of association members and the committee, neighborhood committee. So let's see how we put into motion, so we animate the IGT NPF approach. So as said, we draw extensively from the previous study of Dallov et al. 2021 in how the NPF categories map into the IGT rule types. So this is just a general table that we used to start our analysis. So I will go a bit fast on this one, just to say that, for instance, as it was already showed in the other study, the setting, the NPF category of setting that is not recognized by any IGT rule types, this is really where the action is situated. And so for the IGT, the context can be recognized as the community, in which the action is happening. And then we have the NPF category of characters. We have identified heroes, the villains, and victims. And then this can be found specifically in IGT in position rules, boundary rules, and in our case also with choice rules. And then we have also the identification of new characters. We will see in a bit in the enrollment phase, plot and morale. And specifically plot and morale, we have IGT rules such as aggregation, payoff, and scope rules. And then we will see in a bit how the new characters fit with information rules mostly. But let me show you the real animation of our approach. So we prepared this graph that is, I think it's very interesting because it's really showing how the process unfolds and the dynamism that we really wanted to put. That is, I think, the added value of our approach. So you have, and you see here how each phase recognized by hand is also represented and defined by NPF categories and some IGT rule types. So in the first phase of problematization that we call multivocal problematization, so in this phase, in an innovation process, this is really the critical first step about the decision of the policy. So this is where, in our case, the major is deciding to start the smart city project and is embracing all the different views that are expressed by the other actors about making Alphaville an actual smart city. So most important here is the adoption of the GPD text, that is a multivocal document that set out what the smart city is really going to be about. So this corresponds to the NPF category of setting, and the correspondence with the IGT is more on the, again, exogenous context of the attributes of the community. Moving on to the interrogation phase. So this second phase concerns the identification of the main characters that is in line with the key priorities that are identified in the problematization phase. So here we have 3 heroes, 3 villains, and also the victims. So we identified as villains, for instance, the traffic congestion, the CO2 emissions, and also the lesser territorial attractiveness of the city before becoming a smart city. And then, so if we read this phase, the interrogation phase, in IGT terms, we find that it is made mostly of position rules, related boundary rules, and also choice rules about the actions of these actors. So a successful interrogation phase then leads to the enrollment phase. So this is about the use of activities by which the characters are attributed to the new roles, and what these roles are also aimed at. So in our case, this is really aimed at securing that stakeholders are engaged in the urban transformation of the policy process. So if you see, for instance, the NPF plot here is used to allocate the new roles and also the morale of the narratives that emerges here. And if we consider the rules that really sustain the plot, And the morale, we start with the aggregation rules, and then that really allocate the roles to the different firms that take part in the action, and also the academic partners, that they come together for their aim, and also at least 3 scope rules that are describing the specific outcome of this innovation action. And then finally, the mobilization phase. So this is the moment in which the major engaged to inform the citizens with a lot of press conferences that were organized, and also a stable presence on social medias. So in NPF terms, this is about new characters. Specifically, we call the new heroes identified, which are mainly the journalists and then also the citizens. And this is captured by the IGT rule types of information. So we also have the a more general overarching information rules, and then the that is also decomposed in more specific information rules, really about all the different press release and conferences that were organized by the journalists. So this is just to show, and I think there is a typo, mistake. This is not IGT category, but IGT rule types. Some of our findings that, again, we're still work in progress. We haven't finished, at least also on the discussion of our findings. So what we can say up until now is that we, in order to study a complex system such as the one of a smart city, the developing of a smart city, so we are in the urban planning area, we elaborated a more complex, we understand, but also a better approach that is combining ANT, IGT, and NPF in order to shed a new light of this innovation, but also to grasp really the dynamism of this process. So we qualified, in fact, the dynamics of the creation of these networks that take part in the innovation policy process through the narratives and the institutional rules. And so what we are trying to do is to use in a processual perspective with the ANT phases, the IGT and NPF categories. So to examine better the strategic behavior in such a complex policy environment, such as the one of Alphaville. So this is everything.
All right, thank you, Gaia. We'll open the floor now to any questions that folks have for her. Uta, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Gaia. Thank you so much for that interesting presentation. I really thought it was super interesting that you combined the ANT and the NPF along with the IAD to kind of make sense of this urban smart city development. And it's of interest to me for many reasons, from a practitioner perspective, but also from an academic perspective. And I was wondering in the problematization phase, so I think it's great. I was just wondering if you might be able to inform the problematization phase a little bit more than just the attributes of the community, by also looking at some of the values, because people conceptualize where they want to go, right? When they first come together and they identify a problem, everybody has preconceived notions of where they want to be. And I'm going through this right now in my city, where we're trying to pass a sustainability plan, and it is far from easy putting a sustainability plan together. And we're not even talking about smart city, although that's one aspect of sustainability. But a lot of what's coming up are these values and conflicting values between what community members represented through advisory boards that are part of some cities. And I don't know how it is in Europe, but here in the US, there are advisory boards of citizens that contribute and give feedback to city council members on things like smart city. And so there's really a package of values, differing values that come into play that then inform policy more or less. Sometimes they get ignored, sometimes they push matters forward. But I was wondering if that might help inform the IGT section of your problematization phase. But a super interesting work. Thank you for this.
Thank you very much. That's very useful. Thanks. I'm just seeing there is another question, or I will follow up on that.
Any other questions for Gaia? Chris, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry for that. And if not anything else. So thank you very much for the very interesting discussion. I think it was very exciting to hear about how you thought about the actors more explicitly, right? So the role they play in conjunction with the institutions, and coming with a bit of a modeling background, I got a bit excited there. But that's not the point I want to make. The point is more, you associated different rule types with different stages. And particularly the last one, mobility, was only associated with the information rules. And Gaia, do you think it would be enough to just work with information rules? Because fundamentally, a lot of shaping is actually done, by normative procedures. Ute pointed to values, for instance, as a foundation to, elicit conflicts, or perhaps, discussion and kind of the real discourse, to be honest. And I'm wondering how you want to think about qualifying information rules more richly in terms of directionality, intent, like thinking about speech acts as a concept there. I don't know, to have a bit more, I guess, qualitative value and ability to differentiate, and also kind of to think about, normative processes. I felt very much reminded of norm life cycles there, like, how particular attitudes emerge and then are socialized and rejected or adopted, internalized by the society, and so on. And I'm wondering whether the rule types are just a bit too coarse-grained, right, of a mechanism right now to reflect that in its richness that it probably could, should, and probably has to, in order to, have an explanatory account. That's something you want to offer as part of your research, right? So that's a reflection that came to mind while hearing your excellent talk. Very exciting. I really like the idea of looking at rules and narratives at the same time and see how they evolve in cooperation. So thank you very much for the talk in the first place.
If I may just jump in, because Gaia, of course, I hope you'll have time to respond to that. But I guess I had a very similar reaction as Chris, is that I really like that you are comparing these the NPF and the IG and the method, as Ute noted. I think that there's so much opportunity there, and I was thinking about kind of the mapping of rule types to the different NPF categories. And I was trying to think about what, just drawing on my own experience with coding and classifying by rule types and classifying by IG. I was trying to think about the mapping, and it wasn't always entirely intuitive to me. But because I can think about, for example, the new characters coming through boundary rules and position rules, insofar as like boundary rules can, create eligibility criteria for new actors to come in, or, or new characters to come in, or might, create positions for new actors. So I was thinking about these different iterations, but then I guess that really just opened my mind up to thinking along the ways that Chris was suggesting, which is there a way to maybe look within the statements that are classified as one, and then again, and secondarily as the other, like by rule type, but then again by the NPF categories, to see if maybe there are specific kind of syntactic patterns that actually give you additional insight about, how those rules are structuring those different aspects of the narrative, or relate to the different aspects of the narrative. So I guess my overarching comment, in a long-winded way to say it, is I really like what you're doing. And I wonder if there's to add some more richness to it, if you could maybe go deeper into the rules that you're classifying across the two taxonomies, and see, does a deeper classification or drawing out additional features of those statements actually give you some more complexity that could be helpful. It may also help you in the classification exercise. because it might actually give you more features on which to engage the classification reliably, but in a way that is conceptually interesting too. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I'm just saying that this is something I was thinking about also with my co-authors, with my colleagues. And absolutely, I think we are going in this direction also with what Ute said on the problematization phase. I also think there might be, we can add some richness as well there in terms of values, absolutely. And yeah, I think this is the direction that it's not easy, of course, because it requires a lot more work, but absolutely, because otherwise maybe we're going to miss some key features there that are there. And also this is, I think, the role of IGT compared to NPF and on categories, to go a little bit even more in depth on the analysis. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I got excited about Christopher's and Saba's comments. Is this just hypothetical, the framework? And I'm sorry if I missed that. So this is just hypothetical right now? Because it may be interesting to look at a case study and see how these different areas in the ANT, how they map onto the narrative, and just do a comparison, because you might actually, this is so novel that you might actually inform the IGT perspective by just looking at what actually happens in a smart city design. And I also wanted to mention real quick that there is an effort underway to start parsing choice and scope rules into more refined categories. So scope rules might help you with the values because they're kind of outcome oriented, and choice rules might help you with the diversity of actions that are being taken. So if you're interested in that, Irene is doing that work with some of her grad students. So they're working on a paper that they presented in Nairobi, where they're starting to parse choice, and I think scope rules as well, into more refined categories, more useful categories. And I'll stop there. Sorry for jumping the line.
That's absolutely very, very interesting, and I will touch base on that. Yeah, absolutely, because exactly what you said, it was what I was having in mind, what we are having in mind when doing this analysis. So yeah, absolutely. So exactly, values is about scope rules and more refined choice rules with the subcategories of choice rules. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that's really exciting. I know how to go about now.
Claudio, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to contribute with three observations that may help you. One is about anonymization. As a reader or reviewer, I would need to be persuaded deeply that anonymization is necessary, because knowing what city is helps a lot in understanding the context, the institutions, the time. Otherwise, as Ute was saying, it looks a bit fictional, so it may or may not be true. And also it helps people who want to replicate the studies. Okay, this was North Korea, next time I do Mexico, so I take into account the difference in context. The second thing where I would like to see more, and I'm sure you can do it, is on the, it's a bit of a paper in search of its dependent variables. So it has to be made very clear what you are explaining. At the moment, I see an evolution in time of a story of a smart city where everything goes well. Yeah, everything goes according to plan. There are the 4 stages, and in the end, you reach mobilization. But why is that the case? I mean, where is conflict here? Where are those who resist? Where are the losers? Where are the ones who don't play in the story? Do they just watch a film of the smart city getting together? Don't they have any voice? So I think if you say, I want to explain a planning of the smart city is one thing. If you want to explain, I want to say how a smart city got together, then it's a more empirical case study with real actors and not just with the planning documents. And since you have done interviews, there should be something that gets difficult in the story of the smart city. And finally, the way you assign categories across the three frameworks that you mobilize is not, it could be clearer. Like I'm the third person to say that you mobilize people with values, plots, the morale of the story, not with information. I've never been mobilized by seeing information. So maybe you need to put a lot of statements that justify why this category of mobilization maps onto information and not other IGT rules or NPF categories. Also, these new actors, okay, the journalist, of course, if there is information, but they seem to appear passive in the end of the story. Like the others, I think it's great to mobilize three approaches, but then you raise the expectations. Okay, I go big because I'm explaining something really difficult. Otherwise, you will violate in parsimony. Thanks. Okay, that's my phone. Sorry, guys.
Michael. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. I guess I picked a good time to raise my hand. This was fascinating. Okay, this was absolutely fascinating, and I've been trying to sort of sort through how you might sort of go about this in a little different way, or use the narratives in a little different way. And I'm not exactly part of the IGT team, okay, but I'm very interested in the understanding action situations and how they're interconnected with each other. Okay, and these rules are the components, internal components for the action situations. And I'm wondering if you might, I kind of hate to sell my own sort of stuff, but I did the work on the networks of adjacent action situations. And in that concept, each of those rules inside an action situation has been determined by some other action situation to which the focal action situation is adjacent. Okay. And so part of what you're trying to do here, I think, is tell a story of how those rules within an action situation are set up. And you've got them occurring at different points in time, and that's sort of the narrative kind of thing. But they may be occurring somewhere else conceptually. And I think maybe another way to look at this is an action situation itself might be seen as a narrative, okay, in the sense that there are problems coming into it, conditions that set up the problems. There's framing taking place into what kind of a problem this is. There's contestation going on within the action situation as a policy arena, basically. There are choices being considered and invented and discounted. There are comparisons of histories or similar experiences that participants may have had in other sorts of circumstances. So there's kind of a narrative dynamic within the action situation that is closer to the dynamic, since it's coming out of the policy sciences field, closer to a policy cycle sort of dynamic, you know, problem definition, consider the choices, make a decision, implement it, and then evaluate it afterwards, and then start all over again because you never solve any problem in the policy set. So that's the kind of the narrative structure that the action situation was originally built on, the way Lynn sort of started out. And so I wonder if you could think about each of these rules, if they're constructed in some other action situation, then in effect they're like subplots of the narrative or something. There's other portions of there's a process through which those components are constructed in some other process. And so what you've got is not a single narrative, but you basically got different narratives associated with each of the component parts of an action situation that may lead you to go back and examine what's happening in some other action situation. And I don't know enough about this case and And I tried to take as many notes here as I could of what you're sort of doing, but there's an awful lot in here. But I just wonder if thinking along those lines might give you a sense of how you're maybe underselling the the narrative component to what the story you're trying to tell here, that it's really a much more complex story, and that the apparatus of the ID framework and the institutional grammar might give you a way to frame that story or tell that story in some way. So just, I'm curious to hear your reaction to this nutty idea.
Which is, yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. And this really requires a lot of work, but maybe even another paper, another work.
Please do it. We love it. We retired folks love seeing new stuff.
Absolutely. So thank you. That's very precious. Thank you very much. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. I have nothing to say that. Yeah, it just works in my mind. Yeah, absolutely.
Good,
I see.
Good. I look forward to seeing what you do with this. So that's the fun of sort of throwing these ideas out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much also to all these comments that were very constructive. And I really think that I'm sharing also with my co-authors that cannot be attend today, but this is really going to help us a lot to improve on our work. Was really looking forward to the discussion with this community in particular. So thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments for Gaia?
Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for this opportunity and for your very, very interesting comments and useful comments, and for listening to our work.
We'll look forward to hearing how things develop.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, we'll wrap up there then. So thank you to Gaia for presenting this month, and thank you to all of you who came to watch and also offered questions and feedback, and we will see you all next month.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Great job, Gaia. Bye.
Bye.